make construction drawings. Internal elevations is that's what I get from my design model, and it's great. You can get dimensions very easily. If I don't really need to say much.
And this is in layout.
This is in layout, yes, and you can get the dimensions are all accurate. So in my design model, I'll use fittings and fixtures, simplified versions normally. And I put them in, line them up. What you see is what you get. Pass it over to the contractor, and he does it just like the model. It's very easy. And of course, when it comes to electrical plans, you just get the basic plan in just a black and white plan. And then I put all the symbols, well, they're not, the electrical symbols are actually bits of scrapbook I use in my layout, and I just lift it in and get your electrical drawings. I've started doing window schedules like this too, just build those, just understands it a lot quicker. But the construction model, this is kind of why you're here. This is the next step, I suppose. The reason why I use separate models mainly is actually to keep file sizes down. So in my design model, I'll be using lots of fittings and fixtures that might be taking up a lot of polygons. I put plants, trees. And the textures as well that I might apply for tiling arrangements and things like that. These all take up a lot of space, as a memory. So in my construction model, I strip all of that out. And it's actually surprising how much of a difference that can make, just for speed purposes. When it comes to construction model, I'm literally using, oh, actually I'll show you that later, but the output from these things, I'm going to get the construction plans. Sorry. Excuse me a moment. Yeah, so plans and sections, I'm going for traditional at the moment, external elevations and detailed drawings as well. We've started to do 3D details as well, but I think maybe for my next project I'll do more of that. So just to give you the anatomy of the construction model, it has everything in it. There are notable things that I do leave out. For instance, I leave out membranes. I don't do fixings like screws or bolts even. Joist hangers, I leave them out. Sheet material are a bit difficult to model. So I make the judgment that I'm going to I figure out what is actually going to be quicker. Is it going to be quicker for me to model one building, have all these sections taken out, updated in real time, or is it going to be a lot quicker for me to just put in the sheet materials in 2D, in layout, just on the drawings that I need them. Excuse me, my mouth is getting a bit parched. I think one of the reasons I really enjoy modelling in SketchUp is that sort of doing the construction side, having the sort of, is to get the builder's perspective on it all. And when I've got an awkward shaped site like this, and I decided to do a pitched roof as well, the problems become obvious, I think. And you start to build and you realise that you have to set out properly as a builder would. And it gives you the discipline to do that. But it just gives you lots of ideas of where the problems are going to be in your construction. I think, yeah, and this slide also shows me what I've left out. You know, so for instance, how I simplify it. I mean, this joint obviously doesn't work. I haven't trimmed it off or anything. It doesn't really matter because the builder understands what's going on. And when it comes to sections, we're not even going to see it anyway. And you can say the same for areas like this. As long as the builder's aware of it, we're okay. But the output of these models, obviously, you know, this is the meat of it. So I'll show you that everything in this drawing, except the membranes, are done all in Skalp. And builders love it. So the only things that are actually that I drew in by hand are things like the membranes, as you can see here, and a bit of the soil as well. And actually, there's another great thing about the way SketchUp is heading is that you can start putting in information into your model, and layout can lift that automatically. So for instance, this little bit here, this note about London stock brick isn't actually written in layout, it's actually a component description in the model itself. So I can change that if I want to do. The point being is that you put the information in the model, and on every page on which you have that auto label in layout, it updates it when you update the model. So that's the way it's heading. It's not perfect yet, because at the moment, for instance, if I try to get some information out of that insulation, which is a Skalp section, I get the Skalp scene view. So, but I'm told that they are working on it, and there's a few things need to happen on the SketchUp API side, I think, as well. So watch that space. Another thing to note here is that I haven't modelled individual tiles, so it's not quite correct here. But in the next scene, when I actually start to do detail, I draw the tiles in 2D over the top, so I'll just show that to you here. So, yeah, that's with the model taken out. Okay, so that's the detail. This is the output. I was going to spend a few moments just taking through the model and how you might sort of make a construction model. All right. Just give you a very strange mouse map here. Okay. Does anyone know how to reset workspaces? Right. Okay.
Did you get there?
That's right. Yes. Perfect. I think. And right. This is a model. It's of Victorian terraced house. I've taken out the neighbouring buildings for the purpose of the construction drawing, but the most important thing when you're modelling with construction drawings, doing a construction model, is to keep everything really quite organised. For instance, make use of layers. It's an obvious thing. I want to keep them simple as well. If you start to group all the elements together, you can actually have sort of various layers of layers, if you see what I'm saying, sort of nested layers, and you can do quite important things. The first thing I would suggest you do, obviously, is to split everything up into different stories. And then, so the first sort of group that you come across, just keep your eye on the sort of the entity info. That's the whole building as a component. And then the next level down is this whole story. Some might argue that that roof should be on the story above. Then you go into the next level down, and now we are into the elements, the roof, the walls, foundations, which sort of I put on the floors there. And within each element obviously has a layer associated to it. I always prefix, just a note on sort of prefixing layers. I would always prefix it with a like normally, because it comes at the top and it sort of stands for architect. Very handy. And when we get deeper in, I'm going to sort of simplify it a bit, take those slates out. Now you can start to see all the elements in there. So within the roof group, I might have what I would call a construction group, prefixed AC, which has all the buttons in this instance. When you get right down to the deepest level, that's when the building components that you can see. In this case, these are components, and there are 67 of these buttons in the model. And I don't trim off the end to perfectly get them perfectly aligned here. Otherwise, I can't do the scale tool I use a scale tool many times just to use the same component and resize them. And I'll notice that it's actually at this level, the deepest level, I have these what I would call material layers. This is where it starts to plug into Skalp. I prefix all my materials with MA and give them a timber group, give them a sort of material, and after a bit of work on Skalp, I get drawing sets. Oops. Okay. Ooh. Oh dear. It's thinking. Here we are. Okay. So, again, timber, I know that you normally put in a cross for the material, but it's a bit tricky at the moment, and I'm told that they're working on it, the Skalp guys, to get this working.
You can do it. Yeah.
And the best way to use Skalp, in my view, to get a really productive workflow is to use, there are many ways to sort of put hatches onto your object, but I always use the layers. So if I wanted to change the layer, I'll go to timber, material, finish, for instance. And I have a material layer set up for that. And when I look at the Skalp scene, I hope it's going to work. I did it wrong. I should do movies more often. What's happened? Oh, so it does work. It does. Skalp does take a little bit of time to work sometimes. So that's how I do that. And then I literally build up all my layers. The insulation goes on. It's not too difficult to do. Buttons. And once I've done this section, I'm not going to show you because I think you've probably seen Guy, you're going to do a demonstration of that already. I get these sections. With Skalp, there's a very beautiful way of doing sections, which is by pattern layer. It's a bit complex to set up though. But if you're going to do just a traditional section, so you're going to face the section itself, it's a very simple trick. And I use Eneroth's fog tool to click on the section face, and then I type in a distance like 100 mil, and then it hides everything behind. In SketchUp, you don't see anything behind, but if you take that same scene to layout, this is what you get. So in the raster mode, you don't see anything behind, but it's very simple. All you want are just line drawings behind. You just use that fog tool, and then you put your scene into hybrid rendering mode, and then you get all the lines behind. And the great thing about this, obviously, is that you get the solidity of the section, and that's what you're looking at. Everything else behind becomes irrelevant, I suppose. And that's how you make really good drawings. But that's pretty much I think it's a good enough overview of what's going on, or how I do my workflow. I was going to just, at this point, I was going to get Guy, Joran on stage as well. And
Thank you for watching Skalp. For more information, visit us as www.skalp4sketchup.com.